right. So for those of you listening, welcome to the Momentum Podcast. We've been walking through great questions around work and life. And today we have a very special privilege with us to have President Dunn, the president of South Dakota State University. In my opinion, the foremost university in all of South Dakota. So thank you so much, President Dunn, for joining us today.
It's great to be with you, Nathan.
Cool. And this is leadership through chaos is, with your permission, that's what I'd really like to ask you about today, because that's our reality, right? Chaos on many different fronts. And I so appreciate your heart for people who are oppressed, people of all people, right? To raise the standard of living for all South Dakotans, to raise our economy, to raise agriculture, and to raise every farmer, rancher, business person to raise their well-being. But you've also done significant work for Native American people. And so I'd love to ask you today some of your philosophy, if it's okay, about leadership through chaos. What keeps you centered? You're responsible for millions and millions of dollars and for this large organization, right? There's thousands of people that respond to you, 11,000, right, plus students, and thousands of students. You are responsible for their well-being in this season of chaos. And I'm sure it could be overwhelming at times, and for any leader with that much responsibility. What is your perspective first on leadership through chaos? And then second, what keeps you grounded during this season?
I think foundationally, I think leadership through chaos takes very strong core values, and as an individual, and then also as an organization. So luckily I'm in my fourth year, I'm into my fifth year as president. And so I've worked very hard in those first 4 years, not knowing this was coming, but trying to create a culture centered around core values that reflect people first, and then diversity, inclusion, access, and then creativity and excellence. And so I think, having those spelled out and accepted, just been kind of pounding them into the organization for over 4 years. I think that's really served us well, because I can constantly return to, this is why we're doing it. This is why I care. This is why you're not coming back after spring break. This is why you're going to go online for a couple months. And by the token, turning right around to say, look, we think we've got this. We think we can bring you back in the fall safely. And if we're not able to do that, then we'll adjust again.
You said core values are something that help ground you, and you mentioned diversity and inclusion, and I think that's very beautiful that you were leading with those, and you have led with those even before the events of this last month, right? What for you in your position? I know we're a divided nation in many ways, right? That you can offend people on either side, and you're responsible to stakeholders on both sides. And you want to honor people on both sides. But you've been very successful in building efforts in diversity inclusion. What are some strategies you've used to build bridges across groups that might be divided? Or any stories that you might want to share with that?
Yeah, for me, it really starts with as deep as I can get an understanding of the historical context with which we've emerged, or from which we've emerged. And so I'm a big Abraham Lincoln fan, and I get that, I get what he did. I think he was an incredible leader. I've read multiple books about him. And so I understand the Emancipation Proclamation. I understand the creation of the land-grant university system, why he did it, why the supporters of that system were so adamant to create public higher education. And so with that grounding, I've been in my office and across the state and in the state capitol. It allows me to take this Abraham Lincoln high ground that I think is really important. That So I think knowledge is absolutely power. And so when I know the history, when I know why this institution was started, how it was started, that's really what I've used as that grounding kind of moral fiber that's run through now since Lincoln was assassinated, tragically. But I think of Lincoln in terms of George Floyd. We remember now that George Floyd was killed by the brutality of racism, and let's not forget that the greatest president we've ever had, one of the greatest leaders in the history of the world, was assassinated because of racism. So anyway, being able to tie
that's a powerful parallel.
Yeah, historical threads together are just so important for effective leadership. And to the American Indian issues, Native American issues here in South Dakota, I have a family background that helped me. But again, I know the history, I know the story, I know who Crazy Horse is, I know who was, I know what happened at Wounded Knee, and with that knowledge, I'm able to explain what and why we're doing the things we're doing.
Wow. So it's history that really informs your beliefs and understanding of the oppression that has happened for various groups of people and our role in it, maybe, and then how South Dakota State can play a role in supporting and lifting up, it sounds like.
Yeah, if you don't really understand the manifest destiny, you cannot understand what got us to where we're at. And the manifest destiny was just a powerful force that drove expansion based upon Christian values across all of continental United States, and some thought that they should keep going. That was in the 19th century. But I'm not I'm not naive. My wife and I live on her family's homestead, Nathan. So that homestead that we live on at some point was someone else's land, and I understand that. From the Native American perspective, my mother's family, I'm a enrolled member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe in western South Dakota.
Wow.
My mother's family was placed on the Rosebud Reservation, forcibly placed on the reservation, about the same time as Jane's family, my wife's family, was homesteading here, and so one begot the other. And I get it, and I've lived it, but I know, and I think that helps me a lot. So.
It's a tragic, but what a beautiful story too of your influence at South Dakota State. Now, to be a descendant of people who were forcibly placed on Rosebud, now that you are leading change and initiatives for people who have been oppressed.
Yeah, I take this beautiful language of the 19th century. I wish I was as eloquent and as Justin Morrill, who was a congressman who has the kind of named after, the land-grant system was named after, which I love. It's not spelled moral, but it's a Morrill. But so, and he, in his writings and in his testimony in Congress, if you're willing to dig in and learn, he pronounced that this creation of this university system based on public education, on the idea that public education would benefit all of our nation, rather than kind of the elite church-based system that had come over from Europe. As he expounded upon it, he used words like access for all. Well, I can quote access for all and say, 90% of the population of South Dakota is American Indian, and less than 2% of the population of our student body. And so anyway, so
if we're really access for all, it needs to be a little bit of an adjustment then.
Right. So you've got to figure out how to adjust the system. And that's what we've been doing for the last 4 years, trying to become more sensitive to those young people's needs, and so we're really good at serving middle class Americans here. What we need to do is become really good at serving all Americans here.
And I think that's the same at many of our universities. My university is the same, right? That underrepresented, oppressed groups of people have lower graduation rates. We're very good at serving white America. How do we expand that inclusion and efforts to lift up all people?
So, and you've got to dig into, we received grant funding to create an educational program for all our staff and faculty about American Indian history, culture, and current issues. So it's going to be a web-based, but it's not perfect, but until you get some sensitivity, and so our employees who are answering the phone for financial aid, or and they get a call from someone on the Rosebud, a family member of mine, maybe.
Wow.
And really have to struggle to get them enrolled and to get them financial aid. If you've lived on the Rosebud like I have, you understand those struggles. But if you don't, you have a tendency to get frustrated, and so service to them is much harder if you don't have some understanding of from where they come.
So beautiful, and there aren't. Right. I think there are parallels, right, between the oppression of African Americans and Native Americans, both unjustly moved, both under oppression from systematic issues. And you've made intentional efforts, strides, maybe arguably some of the greatest educational strides, right, in the Dakotas have been made through recent efforts from South Dakota State. So for other presidents across the country or people of influence that are wanting to take similar steps, because we have Native American groups around the country, what advice do you have for other people of influence that are saying, oh, wow, we are underrepresented and we're really not making an effort? Not out of intentionality, but we just hadn't thought of it. We're not making an effort to reach, say, the Native American community. What advice would you have for people in those roles?
Well, it's tough, but you just have to look in the mirror and say, look, I've got this little window of time. Barry has this little window of time where I'll have some influence on who gets educated and who doesn't. And I just got chills running through my body when I said that. You've got to really. So I don't see that we have a choice. I mean, I've made a commitment to be the president of a public land grant, a public university. So I don't have a choice. The recent Somalian refugees who live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, need to be come here too, and so we're up to them. And the Karen people who've been who were brought in from Southeast Asia to work in packing plants in several communities in South Dakota. We're reaching out to them and trying to bridge the cultural gaps that naturally exist, to talk to them about the Mexican Americans, Latin Americans coming from all over South America, working in large dairies in South Dakota, earning very low wages, doing really tough work. But if you visit with them, their hopes and dreams were like mine, or like yours, or our parents, and so making that American dream available to everyone is what I've got to do, and I just don't even see it as a choice. So I see it as an honor, not even a choice.
I love that passion and urgency. It does. I can tell you've been informed, right, by some of our nation's first leaders that saw that as, like, God gave us this opportunity for this short period of time. How can we steward it and really make this moment in history matter? I hear that same urgency in your voice that, okay, earned or deserved, like that doesn't matter. I'm arrived in this position of influence. And how can I make this matter?
Yeah, it's pretty precious. And it's on the American Indian initiative that we've started, we call it Lakini, which in Lakota means new beginning. And I went back to a Sioux C.S. Lewis quote, and I'm not great at quoting anybody, but C.S. Lewis said beautifully, he said, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start now and change the ending. And so from that new beginning is where we got the Lakota word wokini, and wokini is a new beginning. So I can't go back, Nathan, to 1878 and 1886 and and 1890 after Wounded Knee. I can't go back, but I can start today and then change the ending for these people by offering the benefits of higher education. So that's what we're doing.
It seems almost like it's a story, right? If I'm reading this book, right? And if you're reading these parallel narratives or watching a movie, that here's this oppressed group of people getting slaughtered at Wounded Knee, and here's this homestead family like struggling through the fierce winters, the Laurel Ingalls Wilder style. and hear these parallel narratives and then coming together hundreds of years later. That's I see that in you, that there's this coming together that no one planned on really. But it's you're building that together. That's so beautiful.
Well, thanks. It's very exciting and very it's been very rewarding. It's an interesting. It isn't without risk and it isn't without challenges. But I really don't feel any risk at all. I have an age of maturity, I'll put it that way, that no one can. I mean, if I lost my job, I'm fine, and I'll continue my work in another way. So that doesn't bother me at all. So I'm not a 40-year-old person.
Gives you a lot of freedom.
So that's been removed from my life. So I think that gray hair does have an advantage, that fear out of the equation. And on what I've decided to I know we've been challenged politically in what we're doing. And so my idea is to take such a moral high ground that just no one can shoot at it, and again express it in my writings and in my speeches. Where if you just, what are you going to say? There's 75% of the women in the South Dakota penitentiary, in the state penitentiary, are American Indian. They're 9% of the population, and 75%. And they didn't get there stealing hubcaps. They didn't get there. They got there because of drug abuse and poverty and lack of education, lack of opportunity. Yeah. And so when you know the facts and you know the history, you just take it up there and let someone take a shot at you, but it doesn't work very well.
Yeah, I've spent a significant amount of time volunteering on Pine Ridge and in Hobbema Indian Reservation, now called Matasquatchis in Alberta, Canada. And so many of the kids there, you ask what their dreams are, and they don't have any.
Right.
That there's, in psychology, we would say that there's no self-efficacy or low self-efficacy. Their belief in their ability to succeed. They don't have role models, right? Their dad abandoned them and said, "Screw you," and left.
Right.
Their parents may or may not be present. The first friends they had were maybe recruited for a gang.
We attacked that.
Yes.
We have an aviation program. You can learn to be a pilot here. And so we took all of our trainer planes, and we flew them to Cheyenne River Reservation. And then we took we drove we pulled our portable flight simulator out and spent basically a week flying junior high kids around their reservation. And when they weren't in the air, they were on the flight simulator, and the flight simulator had been programmed to be the Cheyenne River Reservation, so they could fly both virtually as they waited patiently to get in a plane, and that we could fly them over their home. We could fly them down to Pier and back to the state capitol. We could, so what we took a part of the world to them that they never could have imagined. And so that's one of the many little things we do to try to break that to give them a sense of purpose in the world and that there's something else
I
out
love
there.
that.
Yeah.
And I would guess that's probably the first time South Dakota State or any other aviation program has done that.
Right. It was. Yeah. Won't be the last. And we've done it with chemistry teachers, crazy chemistry teachers doing fun experiments. And we've done it with our nursing program. And so we've done it many, but you got to care,
Wow.
The coolest thing about the aviation program is they didn't come and ask me for money. They just did it. So.
Oh my goodness. You have incredible faculty and leaders there. That's so beautiful.
Well, I swear it gets back to those core values. People-centered, diversity, excellence, and you just start living that and trying to emulate that and celebrate that, and pretty soon people start acting, doing, finding ways to express their creativity to solve problems around diversity with a commitment to excellence, and all of a sudden that all comes together around a people-centered approach to serving.
I'd love to dive into your core values a little bit and to unpack those. And I'm sure you've done this many times with your faculty and staff. But what does people-centered mean?
It's really interesting. When I became president, I started immediately a strategic planning process. Duh, everybody does. And assigned the appropriate vice presidents, and made it real important. But what emerged, and I don't know why, maybe because I think I tried to cultivate it, but what emerged was about, I'd say 50 young staff members and faculty members who really started owning this process. And
did you come in with the values?
No, they came out with values.
I love that.
Yeah, that group of 50 came out with people-centered. I mean, they want, that's not my idea. That was, I can
That's
say
very different than CEOs and presidents usually lead with. They came in like top down. This is the values.
Well, I was present, and I'm sure I influenced it some, but that group of young people, that never would have come from 50 people my age. So that energy, and we had to pick diversity, and we had to, some excellence, you have to pick excellence, but being people-centered and have what does people-centered mean? It's really thinking about someone else first, and thinking about your colleague or your student or your or someone in a community in South Dakota before you think of yourself.
And then diversity and inclusion, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, access to all. So that's, I don't like the colorblind thing. I want different cultures.
Yes.
I don't. Yes. This isn't about being colorblind. This is being about loving the colors.
Amen. Yes.
So a Somal, if we can get Somalian or the children of Somalian refugees on this campus,
beautiful.
That they will light us up.
Yes.
And, if we can get American Indians here and have and we do, but we get more and have a better powwow, a better wachipi, they'll light this place up in a way that's been different, and it'll enrich everyone. And so anyway, we're excited about it. We're not there yet. We got a long way to go. It needs to get. My goal is that I get it so ingrained in that people come here to work because that's who they are. And so after I leave and my short time is gone, that what I've left is an organization that is made up of people who share those values and want to be here because of those values. That's my goal.
And then finally, commitment to excellence. What does that mean?
Excellence, you know it when you see it, and it's when it's absent. And so it can be measured by test scores of a pharmacy program or an aviation program or student success rate, certainly. But it can be measured by success of alumni. It's really cool that one of recent past heads of the CDC was Dr. Julie Gerberding from Volga, South Dakota, and that's excellence when a small
Wow.
in the middle of America produces someone who leads the Center for Disease Control under during the Obama administration. That's excellence, and so I guess you know it when you see it. But in terms of people-centered, so there we have I can tell you what it is and what it isn't, and so one of our young Native American women was walking from the Walmart, which is a few blocks from campus, in a relatively miserable day, and I got a call from a really caring person here on campus who said, "Barry, so-and-so I saw walking. You should call one of your American Indian staff and have them give her a ride." And now that's not excellence. Excellence will be, Nathan, one generation from now, when that picks her up and I never hear about it, we've achieved excellence. So
oh boy.
That's it. Certainly he had taken a step towards people-centered, but he really hadn't embraced the full concept. So
appreciate you acknowledge it on a spectrum. It's not like people-centered or not people-centered, just like it's not racist and not racist, or justice or non-justice. We're on a spectrum. We're on a continuum.
Yeah. So we have a ways to go. And by the same token, one of the major donors that has emerged is a white middle-class farming family from north of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and they're providing large scholarships to multiple young people. And wow. You never have predicted that family, who I knew before, and all of a sudden they've emerged as a major donor for Wokini. And so there's some really great, that's excellence. And then there's some things we have to work on.
You alluded to a generation from now, right? When it's when it's laughable that someone would say, "Oh, you need someone of your ethnicity to pick you up," right? What's your hopes, right, for South Dakota? Either either in your influence or the South Dakota of the future, that you can go anywhere from here. South Dakota, a South Dakota state slogan that I see that, and often the advertising is this physical. But what about South Dakota? Like, what is South Dakota justice, equality, excellence? We can go anywhere from here. What does that anywhere look like? Or what's your dream for a South Dakota you want to live in? You want your family 50 years from now, South Dakota state to be 10, 20 years from now?
It's really an exciting time. And we set this up before George Floyd was murdered, didn't we, Nathan? And all of a sudden, now that's everywhere, and his funeral is today, and so a generation from now, there will be, there'll be a murder, there'll be something. I know I'm not stupid, but boy, if we could take race out of that equation, what we've suffered, we collectively, especially the minorities, but we've suffered from slavery talk about a virus, talk about, if I could do a vaccine, I'd do that one before COVID. I mean, it's really been a horrible legacy for America. And slavery, racism, that manifest destiny based upon, and I'm personally a Christian, and I just will not own that manifest destiny. I just think it's horrible.
Yes.
So a generation from now, certainly evil will still be present in the world, but hopefully it's not based on race and ethnicity and degrading people and holding them down, and figuratively now, with not a noose around their neck, but a knee on their neck. The images are just so powerful in all this. the difference I see from my life is that, and you can see it in the pictures we've seen, or the video that the news medias have been replaying. In the 1960s, when I was a teenager, the marches were almost all Black people marching for freedom. And the marches now, the march we had here in Brookings, it was very, very mixed, and that's a big step for us. And it was all the marches are also people your age and young, and my son, and that's inspiring for me, hopeful for me.
What do you want education to look like when I reach your age, right? And when people like my age are university presidents, what do you want education to look like?
Well, I worry that worry that we're losing some rigor and intellectual prowess. We shouldn't. We've got to stay. I'd like to actually almost reinfuse some grit and some tenacity and some willingness to risk and fail. So that, you don't get a grade for participation. You get a grade because, and it might be a B, because you've worked harder than you worked harder on that paper than you've ever worked in your life. So that's probably wishful thinking, but that's what I'd like to do. I wasn't a 4.0 student, and I'm pretty smart. I'm not really smart, but I'm pretty smart, and I had to work really hard, and that's a good thing. And being challenged to know whether it's through. So in academia, you earn these letters after your name, and you do literature reviews, and so that's history. What you're learning is what has gone before you, and you're basing your experiment and your exploration of a topic around what's already happened, and you're being guided by that. That's no different than me learning about Abraham Lincoln and Justin Morrill and fighting the manifest destiny. So I think some willingness to really dig in, that's what I would like for education.
So your top would be rigor, like deeper rigor, more comfort with failure for education as a whole, like as a nation.
Absolutely. Thank you. You said it well.
And what would the why? What's the why behind that? Suppose we have a more rigorous educational system, this one where people fail, the one where we're producing by far the best literature reviews, data, science, empirical evidence in the world as a nation. Why does that matter?
And not to take away the human side of this, so my first thought was efficiency, but whether it's creative genius in the arts or in science, why waste our time, replowing old ground for those of us who have some agriculture background. So, how exciting is it to plow new ground, and based upon understanding the mistakes of the past, not critically in terms of bad or good, but from not making them again. What can we learn about how Steve Jobs and a group of really interesting people took us to a place in the world where a library is the same thing as my phone, and I can learn. Thank goodness for Wikipedia. I can learn lots of things.
Thank you. I am also in that camp of thank goodness for Wikipedia. And many professors disagree.
I think it's our job as professors to participate in Wiki and be, it's our responsibility to be the caretakers of that information. So anyway,
I love that.
So a little bit
cool.
Different.
Yeah. So today we've talked about so many things. You're a very fascinating person. And I appreciate your wisdom too for such a time as this, that for this season, right? You've your person of faith for the season. God has allowed you and placed you in this position of influence, and you've worked for it too, right? To be in this role, to steward the university, to steward the land grant university and the students and residents of South Dakota and their well-being. We've also talked about justice in the current events as well as education. I like to close with some words of information or words of inspiration or words of advice that I grew up and still am a Jacks fan, right? That I'm tuning in from California, seeing the Jacks, and there's a patriotism kind of or allegiance around South Dakota State that is really special. I went to a wedding, one of my cousin's weddings. They had all the Jacks alumni come up to the stage, and it was half the people in the room, and the energy there was unbelievable. So first, thank you for contributing to this legacy that lifts up South Dakota and we're so proud of as a community, and your leadership that people listen to you. that's given based as your person and your role. What words of inspiration or advice might you want to give to the people of South Dakota?
I just think the future is if we're willing to embrace the challenge, and I mean that in a very holistic way, the future is so bright. But we can't. But my concern is that we'll squander that opportunity, and I'd like to light a little fire in everyone and just get excitement for loving. I'm for those of you listening, you won't understand West River, South Dakota. I'm a West River, South Dakota guy, and I love the prairie, and I love that ecosystem, and it's fragile and it's danger, but we can have food systems based on that, but we have to have this, and we have to have a caretaker stewardship model that's I think somewhat sometimes missing. So I see this very bright, beautiful South Dakota sunset, and then the next morning a great sunrise. But it takes a lot. We have to take responsibility to make sure that continues.
I love that. This cautious hope, this like realistic optimism. I think that's a practical place, right? With wise-eyed open to all of the events to look for the future. Thank you, President Dunn, so much for your time. I know you are pulled in many directions during this season. Thank you for sharing wisdom and insights. Thank you for your leadership and influence. This is an interview I think will bless many people. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to meeting you in person and saying mom and dad for me.
Will do. All right.